it's Hailey and welcome back. I guess welcome back to me more so. It has been a little bit. I decided to take a bit of a break after Bookmas because I was exhausted. That is the hardest I have ever gone for Bookmas before, and honestly, I don't think I'll do that much again because I usually am able to finish Bookmas by like the middle of the month, but I literally was doing stuff like after Christmas. I still had stuff to do. So yeah. It was fun though. I'm glad that it's done and I'm super happy with how it turned out. But despite that, I still was able to read a ton in the month of December. Other than a couple of books, I ended up reading pretty much all like holiday reads. So there is a giant stack here. These are all the books that I have to talk about today. Like you can't even, that's everything that's happening right now. There is a lot. So I have a ton of books to share with you guys today, and I'm going to try and be as brief as humanly possible, but I'm just going to be kind of giving you guys my spoiler-free thoughts on all of them. And if you wanted to check any of them out, I will have the link down below for you guys. But yeah, I'm dreading filming this, to be honest, but you thought we were done with Christmas, but it turns out we are absolutely not because I just read so much. Also, if I have any reading vlogs for any of these books, because I did a couple of reading vlogs during Bookmas, I will link that down below as well. But let's just get to it. Okay, so first book we have here is There's Something About Mary by Cody Hall. This is the second book in the Mistletoe romance series. I think they're originally released as audiobooks, but I did listen to all of these. That has been my thing lately. I've pretty much just been listening to audiobooks. I've discovered that it is very, very helpful for me, and I'm actually able to pay more attention to an audiobook than I am to like an actual physical read. So I have been embracing that, and obviously, I mean, it's been paying off. But There's Something About Mary, I had read the first book in this little like companion novel series. It's a series of romances, obviously holiday themed romances. The first one I read last year, and that is Nick and Noelle's Christmas Playlist, and I really loved that one. That one was like a best friends to lovers story, and I'm just such a sucker for that. It's one of my favorite tropes. So when I saw the author had a new book out, I knew I had to pick it up. And they're all interconnected. They're like set in this town called Mistletoe, and they're following like different characters who kind of know each other in some way. And there's actually a new one that I think is coming out next year, but the audiobook is already out, but it's following the sister of one of these characters. Anyways, they're all very close, so you get to see like everyone pop up in all of the books. And this one was really fun. I liked this one a lot. I definitely didn't enjoy it like quite as much as I had enjoyed the first book, but I think it's just because of the tropes. So this one didn't really have very many tropes unless I'm just like forgetting, but it mostly was just a story where you were watching these two characters get to know each other and slowly fall in love. And it was very sweet. You have like a lumberjack character basically, and there's also like he has a kid, so there's that aspect of it. By the way, it is set on a Christmas tree farm, so like obviously that's an important aspect. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. I did really like it. I don't have like all that much else to say about it. Conversely, Always in December by Emily Stone, I have a lot to say about, and most of it I can't say because it's spoilery. But if you guys would like me to kind of do a whole video like ranting about certain books that I didn't like, I could do that for you guys. I know I don't generally do that, but this one, man, had me so frustrated. Like, I'm still mad about this one. It was to the point where I finished it, and then I literally called both my sisters and my mom to be like, what just happened? Like, what did I just read? I had to talk to someone about what happened in this book because I was so irritated. I'm not going to say a ton because I don't want to spoil it, but basically there is something that happens quite a ways through the book that came out of nowhere. There was foreshadowing for certain things, but what ended up happening was way to the extreme and not in a good way. I understand what the attempt was, but the actual execution to me just felt kind of like lazy, like it was for shock value. So I was super irritated about how this happened, and I felt like honestly, like the whole book, I read it for nothing, and I was just so mad. I will link my Goodreads review down below actually, because I do like a little spoiler section that's hidden. So if you wanted to know more of my thoughts about this, or if you're not going to read it and you want to know what ends up happening, then you can do that. But just know, like, the sentence. It's literally a sentence. I was so scandalized. I can't even say any more about it because I'm gonna spoil it. Next, The Silent Stars Go By Sally Nichols. This is a historical fiction. It's a YA historical fiction Christmas story. So I was like, yes, that's perfect. It's set in like 1919. And it is kind of a Christmassy story. Like, a lot of these are Christmassy stories in the way that there's like a key scene that happens at Christmas, so that's why it's Christmassy. This one I really struggled to connect with. It's about a young girl. It's right after World War I, and it's kind of the first Christmas after that where people are actually able to gather. And someone she fell in love with, like, he ended up going off to the war, and then he came back, but then now she has like this secret that she's hiding from him. So yeah, it's all about that. And I struggled to connect with this one. I wanted to enjoy it a lot more than I actually did. And I think where I struggled the most was that it's told kind of in like snapshots. So it was hard to really get a grasp for everything and the characters and care for the story all that much. I think it is a very different like Christmas story. So I think it is a great one because, I mean, a lot of these, you know, they're similar, kind of same, like same but different. But this one is definitely like unlike other Christmas books that I have read before. And it's also kind of unlike other books that I've read before. Like, I don't have very many books that are set around World War I or books that are set kind of following like directly after the war. So that was very interesting. It was just the writing that I didn't fully connect with, but I do think that the story does still have like a lot of merit to it. Next, I read All I Want for Christmas by Maggie Knox, and I actually read another book by this author. I'll get to it eventually. I'm not gonna mess up the bio, but this is a story that is set in Nashville. It is following two characters who they are country singers. One is like a very well-established country singer, but he's trying to kind of make a comeback because he's fallen out of favor a little bit. And then the other one, she's trying to make it. She has like big dreams, and that is what she has been trying to do. So they're both on this competition show, and like the finale for it is on Christmas and everything. And they end up in like this fake dating publicity stunt sort of thing. So love fake dating, one of my favorite tropes. But this one, my biggest issue was I loved the Nashville vibes. That was a lot of fun. Loved like the country music and everything. It was super, super fun. But there was so much miscommunication that I was just really frustrated, or not even miscommunication, but lack of communication. That was kind of the main catalyst for a lot of events in the story. And to me, that just felt like kind of a weak premise for things. Like, just freaking speak to each other. I just get so frustrated when that is like the main thing that is driving a story. So as much as I enjoyed the characters and their relationship, the lack of communication was really frustrating. But I did really enjoy this one overall. I think it is like a solid Christmassy story. Next, We Met in December by Rosie Curtis. This one is definitely a book that you could read any time of year because there's not very much of it that is set at Christmas, to be honest. I don't know why some publishers, like, sometimes they have a book that has some key scenes in Christmas, so then they're like, it's a Christmas book, but really you're kind of narrowing the audience a little bit, you know, because there's like a certain time of year that you would be reading that book. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just kind of my little tangent on that. But this is a book that's quite similar to other ones that I've read. It's about a main character who she meets her flatmate and she like instantly has a crush on him, but it's kind of like a missed connections, will they, won't they sort of thing, where it just never seems to be the right time for them. And I've read so many books like this, but I feel like this is the weakest of the ones that I have read that follow this kind of same premise. I just didn't really feel the chemistry between these two characters. It was just okay, but when they like initially met, I was like, okay, cool. But then as like the story goes on and you're following them through many different time periods and they're kind of like struggle to finally come together, I was like, I don't really feel that much chemistry where I'm like dying for these characters to get together, which I think is what drives a story like this. It just kind of was like the absolute slowest of slow burns. It was such a slow burn that I felt like it was never, you know, there was never a flame, essentially. It never caught on fire because it just was like not even embers. It was just like smoking. Maybe smoking makes it seem like it was hot, but it wasn't. It was just fine. I don't know. I wanted more from it. Next, I actually have two DNFs, so I'll talk about them super briefly, but Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory. Someone told me how to say this one, and now I can't remember. Guillory, I think, is maybe how it was pronounced. And then Holiday Switch by Tiff Marcello. I just couldn't get through either of these stories. I can't really remember my particular issue with the Holiday Switch, to be honest. I think I just didn't feel connected with it, and I found the story was kind of overall pretty cheesy. I just don't remember particularly what it was. Because obviously with like a Christmassy book, there's going to be some cheesiness to it, but there's just a certain level that I can handle. And I think this just wasn't it for me. And then Royal Holiday, I do remember. This one had super like oddly juvenile writing because it's about more mature main characters, but it felt even more YA than some of the other like books that I've read. It felt very surface level, and I just didn't really care for that. You kind of dive right into the story, and you know, they have a crush on each other, but then I felt like it didn't get beyond that, and I didn't feel like there was enough of a Christmas element to it. I was really sad because I wanted to love this one, but I just wasn't really into it. I wasn't caring for it at all. It felt very much like bare bones, like this is what we did, and then a lot of like a lot of telling versus showing. That was the main issue. Next is actually probably my favorite like holiday book that I read this year, and that is Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogel. So I think that this is definitely, of all these books, if you're going to read a book like at Christmas, this is the perfect one. And it's also one that I think like you should just read at Christmas. Obviously, if you want to have like Christmas vibes other times of year, then you can read it. I'm just saying it's very Christmassy, but in the best way possible. I am a lover of Christmas and all things holiday, and this like took it to the extreme. Pretty much everything holiday and Christmas was in this book. And I will say it took me a little bit to get into. I almost DNF'd it. I wasn't sure, but then once I got to the end, I was like, oh my God, this is so cute. It's kind of like a Grumpy Sunshine thing, but mostly it's just opposites attract, and you have this character who she is faking that she is like doing really well. Meanwhile, she's actually broke. Her family's rich and she has lost everything, but she's trying to prove to them that she's fine. And then she ends up summoning a holiday spirit, and it's just this lovely story with him like granting all these wishes for her, spending family Christmas with her, and he's just like shocked by her family and how cold they are, and he is just the sweetest cinnamon roll character that you can possibly imagine. It was just so much fun. I laughed out loud multiple times while reading this and had a blast with it. It has all of the Christmassy things you could possibly want in one pretty little package, and it worked so well for me if you stick with it, because I will say I've never read Sarah Hogel before. I know she has a couple of books that are pretty popular, and I do have them on my TBR actually, but the writing was super chaotic, which kind of fit the story. I'm not sure if that's like generally how she writes, is it's kind of like this way, that way, like it felt like my head was spinning a little bit. But once I got into it and kind of gave myself over to the ridiculousness of it, I just fell in love. Next is Meet Me Under the Mistletoe by Jenny Bayliss. This is by the author of The 12 Dates of Christmas, which is one of my favorite Christmas books. I really enjoyed that one. And when I saw that she had a new one coming out, obviously I had to pick it up. But this is another one where I think you could read it any time of year. It is following characters that are like slowly falling in love and kind of like a second chance romance sort of thing. They knew each other when they were kids, but a lot of it is more so about the friend group. There's this friend group, they've been friends since college, and recently they suffered a loss of one of their friends, so they're still kind of struggling with that, and then one of them is getting married, so it's kind of like where they are now and moving on from that. It's really just like this holiday reunion where one of them is getting married and they're all at this wedding. So it's kind of like digging up some of those memories. The main character, all of her friends are very like posh and rich, and she was actually a part of their school on scholarship, so she always felt very different from them, and she still is kind of struggling with like how she compares. She actually owns this bookstore, which was super cute. Like I wish that the bookstore had kind of been more of an element to it. I felt just okay about this one. It's kind of another one where I didn't quite feel the chemistry, and I think my main issue was this felt very long. I got to a certain point where I just felt like it was dragging, and it could have been done quite a while ago, but it just kind of kept going. And I understood like the conflict that the main character was having, an internal conflict and her relationship developing, but like, I don't know, it just got to a point where I was like, this could have been done but I did like it overall. The Holiday Swap is the other book that I read by Maggie Knox, which, by the way, is 2 authors. Didn't know that. Christina Lauren was much more obvious, but Maggie Knox is like an entirely made up thing. But this I had started reading last year, but then the holidays were done, so I put it down, and I had been very excited ever since because my sister read it and she loved it, and I was really liking it when I had started reading it. So I think my expectations may have been a little bit high for this one, to be honest, but that being said, I did really like it still. So it's about twins who end up swapping places. The one is like living the big life. She's on a reality cooking show trying to make it, and then the other one is still at their family bakery. But the one who is in Hollywood, she ends up hitting her head and like loses her sense of taste and smell. So then she decides to swap places because there's like this whole thing. Yeah, essentially they end up swapping places. And then of course, when they like swap places, they're going to meet someone else. It really is like reading a Hallmark movie. Maggie Knox, honestly, their books are 1000% just like reading a Hallmark movie. It was the same thing with All I Want for Christmas. This one, there were some things that happened that I was like, it's kind of a little bit ridiculous by the end, but I like the fact that you got 2 different like love stories. So it was covering a lot of tropes, which was a lot of fun, and it was very festive. I loved the baking element and how prevalent that was to the story, but also that you were seeing kind of 2 sides of like a similar trope. So you had the big city, like now big city girl who's going back to her small town, and then you also have someone who's from a small town who is going to the big city. And I thought that was a lot of fun, and also that they both loved baking and had like their own views on it and were passionate about it. That was super cool. So yeah, this was a very, very fun holiday read. I just think my expectations were the tiniest bit too high. Next, I read Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. This is by the author of The Charm Offensive, which I haven't read yet, but I do want to read really soon. And reading this honestly just confirmed that I really want to read her next book very soon, or her first book very soon. You know what I mean. Okay, I was describing this book, but then I think it's something very different than what I thought it was. I'm getting confused. So this is, I thought it was fake dating, but it's not fake dating with the brother. What is, oh, I can't remember. Oh my God, I'm definitely getting this mixed up with Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellfleur. Okay, totally getting the 2 of these mixed up. This is not a Grumpy Sunshine, like I said, or I mean, it is fake dating, but like different. It's kind of like love at first sight sort of thing. Yeah, okay. Now I'm caught up, and I definitely have been describing this one wrong, and I think I even wrote my Goodreads review wrong because it absolutely is about like Written in the Stars. That's my bad. But yeah, anyways, both of those are really good books. I did really like this one. I thought it was super sweet, like having the character at the Christmas party with the family. It was so cute watching all the Christmassy things that the mom was doing. It was very, very sweet. And there is like a lot of tension to this one, which I thought worked very well for the story. And it reminded me a lot of The Happiest Season because of that, because it's like a, not a secret relationship, but they have a secret, like they had a night where they just fell in love with each other last year, and then she is at the family Christmas and everything, so lots of tension and stuff. And yeah, wow, that explains so much. I was so confused. Next is A Very Merry Bromance by Lyssa K. Adams. So this is the 5th book in the Bromance Book Club series. And this one is another one. Some of these Christmas books are really long. This is another one that was kind of long for my personal taste, but I waited a little bit of time between reading All I Want for Christmas and this one because they are kind of similar. In this book, it's the, like I said, 5th book in the Bromance Book Club series. So you were following Colton, who is the country singer. And I loved Colton. I loved watching him get his own love story. I thought it was very, very sweet. And I loved watching him. This one is definitely a Grumpy Sunshine sort of thing where Colton loves Christmas and his love interest, she absolutely does not. So he's trying to show her like all the great things about Christmas, trying to make her fall in love with it. But there are also like a lot of things happening behind the scenes where they had this one night of passion and she doesn't want to actually have a relationship, but he does. And you just see her trying to why can't I speak? You see him trying to win her over, and it's really cute. Okay, next, I'm gonna move this pile here so then we can see what I've already talked about. So next is Duke Actually by Jenny Holiday. When I picked this one up, I didn't know that it was like part of a series. It's Christmas in Eldovia. It reminds me so much of like some Hallmark movies because, you know, a royal wedding at Christmas in this made up place or European city. It's something that I'm a sucker for, okay? I do love it. But I don't feel like I missed anything having not read the first book. But I did really like this one, so I do plan on reading like the rest in this series because this was super, super cute. It's really about two characters just slowly falling in love, and as you watch them slowly fall in love, it kind of ended up evolving into this sort of friends to lovers story because they became such good friends first, and then you see them come together. So you have the royal wedding in the backdrop of this, but you're following the Duke, who is actually the best man of honor, and then you're following the best woman, who is just like an average American woman. But the two of them end up having this relationship that blossoms over the course of this book, and it is so fun, and it gets really steamy at times, but like I loved how they came together and watching their relationship develop. It just made sense to me. It was super, super cute. And the end, I was like, oh my God, like how it ended up ending just made my heart smile. It was very sweet, and I feel like these should be Hallmark movies, or at least this one since I haven't read the rest, but they would be really good. Next, I actually DNF'd So This Is Christmas by Tracy Andreen. I just didn't really care for this story. I know that this is actually, I found out when I was marking it as DNF, but Tracy Andreen actually is a scriptwriter for Hallmark, so you would think that she would write like the perfect Christmas book, but this just kind of felt like meh to me. I felt okay about it and just couldn't really get into it. However, How to Excavate a Heart by Jake Maya Arlo, I ended up really loving. This is a book I think you can read whenever, but obviously there are some festive elements to it, and it's following two Jewish main characters. So one of them really loves Christmas, the other doesn't, but it's kind of an enemies to lovers, hate to love sort of story. The main character, she was recently in a relationship, which I would say be wary of trigger warnings with this book for sure. There was like a part near the end that I did have to kind of skim at the end. I did really want to finish this story because I was enjoying it so much. So you're seeing her kind of being like girl crazy. She's really struggling with that. Her first girlfriend wasn't the best experience for her, and she now has taken this like archaeology internship. Sorry, I couldn't think of that word. She's taken an archaeology internship, which is like the dream thing for her. And she's spending the holidays working with this, specifically it's like fish archaeology. I can't remember what it's called, but she's working with basically her hero. And she starts to get distracted because she starts to fall for someone. And that obviously is complicating things, but it's also bringing up a lot of things that she didn't realize she was holding on to from her past relationship. This was just like a really, really sweet story, watching the two of them fall in love, but also it did have like that deeper element to it. It dealt with a lot of things very well, and I think I will definitely be looking out for more from this author. There was also a lot of corgi content, which is obviously like top notch. Okay, we are almost done here, but next we have Whiteout, which is by many authors. So it is by Danielle Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon. And this, I didn't realize that Blackout is a book that came out last year, so I'll have to check that one out. But it's kind of like Let It Snow in the fact that it is many different love stories, or really not even just love stories, but many different stories set over the course of Christmas, but also a snowstorm. So Atlanta is being hit by this massive snowstorm, which never happened. So everything is kind of shutting down, and you're seeing many characters throughout the story that then end up coming together in like, they have all of these different short stories. Something that was fun was that you don't know what author wrote which story, which I thought was very cool. Even at the end, there's like little clues, but you don't actually find out who wrote everything. And I thought that was really nice, but it also ended up like everything just seamlessly went together. I also actually read this on a day that we got like a massive snowstorm, so the vibes for that were immaculate, but I think that this was a really fun read. Okay, and finally is A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. So speaking of big books, this book was way too long. It did not need to be as long as it was. However, it was very, very enjoyable. I liked this one a lot. Now, when you look at the cover, maybe it's just me, I thought this looked like YA, and especially with Julie Murphy being a YA author, I thought that this was YA at first. But then once I got it, I was like, this is not YA, because it's actually starring an adult film star. So she ends up getting cast in a Christmas movie unexpectedly, but she's trying to kind of like break out of what she usually does, even though like it's something she does love and she's very confident about it. It's just her trying to kind of like branch out a little bit. This was just so sweet. The two characters I felt like had so much chemistry. I mean, it definitely is a very smutty story, so sometimes the smut got to be a little bit much for me, like just for my personal taste, where it was kind of like constant. I like to have some little breaks of like sweet moments in between, or at least like some story in between, but there were some times where this was just like a lot of smut all in a row. But it was a very good story. I loved the main character. She was so sweet, and really I loved both main characters, and I thought it was definitely like an interesting dynamic because her co-star in this like TV, basically it's Hallmark. Her co-star in this Hallmark movie, he used to be really famous, so she was like obsessed with him, had posters on her wall and everything, but it turns out that he actually is very familiar with her and her work and like really likes her. So at first I was kind of like, that seems a little bit icky, but it was kind of like explained. It still was kind of in the back of my mind where I was like, meh, but as they like developed a relationship, I did end up really liking it. So yeah, this was really good, definitely different for Julie Murphy than like what I'm used to reading by her, but I liked it a lot. Okay, so those are all of the Christmassy holiday reads that I read this year. It is quite a few. How many is it? Wow, 17. I do still actually have quite a few, believe it or not, that I need to read for next year, but I had a lot of fun reading them all this year. I was just like feeling all the holiday vibes, and it was really lovely. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another new one soon. Bye!